This is the third video of our series, Creating Dailies in Davinci Resolve for Avid Media Composer. And this is step 3, exporting media and metadata from Resolve for Avid Media Composer. So in my previous videos, I showed how to import media into Resolve and organize that media into timelines for export. So I have 3 timelines here, one for each video card that I was given by a production of a short film that I worked on. So I'm going to use these 3 timelines in order to export the media and the metadata from Resolve into a format that Avid can really easily understand and read. So I'm going to jump right over here to the Deliver tab in the bottom of Resolve. And this is where we can create the settings in order to export all of this footage in whatever format we choose. So on the left here, we have all of our export settings. The first thing it's going to ask us is, do we want to render this timeline out as a single clip, meaning one big fat timeline with everything end to end, or do we want to export it as individual clips? Now, if I was working with a fully edited film, I would want to probably export it as a single clip, but that's not what we're doing. We're doing dailies. So what we want is we want actually every clip on the timeline to be exported individually as its own file. So I've clicked individual clips. Next, we're going to go down to our video tab and we're going to choose our video format. Now, because I'm exporting dailies for Avid, I'm not going to choose QuickTime, although Avid obviously understands QuickTime files. The quickest and most efficient way to create dailies for Avid is actually to create Avid MXF file. So that is the MXF OP Atom format. So I'm going to click on that and then it's going to ask me my codec. And so you have the option to pick any number of Avid compatible codecs for your dailies. For me, what I'm doing is I'm taking this 5K footage and I'm bringing it down to a size that's really easily managed in Avid. It's going to allow me to edit, playback, render without taking a lot of computer power or a lot of time. And I still want it to look kind of half decent. So my favorite format for doing this is Avid's super lightweight HD offline codec, which is DNX36. It's a 1080 codec. It looks pretty good, but it's really lightweight, doesn't take up a lot of space. So that's how I'm going to do my dailies. And this is still how a lot of post houses will do their dailies. Then there's an audio tab. In this case, we're actually working with footage that doesn't have audio. As you can see, there are actually audio tracks on this footage, but if I play it back, I can hear, there's nothing to hear. The audio tracks are actually empty because they recorded double system. They recorded video on their Red camera and they recorded audio using a separate audio setup. If I were to export audio here, I would just get empty tracks in Avid and there's no need for that. It's just a waste of space. So I'm not going to export any audio. And then under the file menu, it's going to ask me how I want to organize the exports, where I want to put them and so on. What I do is I create a file name that's based on the source name. So this is actually based on the source name of the camera file. If you're concerned that there's been a doubling up of names, you can click the Use Unique File Names checkbox and it'll add a prefix like 001, 002, and so on, so that you can make sure that the file names are unique. In my case, I don't need to do that because I know that the Red camera created unique file names. They're all different, so I can just click source name, it's fine. Then it's going to ask me where I want to put them, if I want to put them in separate folders, etc., etc. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to click Add to Render Queue. And now it's going to say, what's your destination? So I'm going to choose one of my media drives. Obviously, never render to your boot drive. That's a really bad idea. I'm going to open that up and I'm actually going to create a folder, call it example dailies. And I'm going to click OK. And then I also like to create a subfolder inside of that. And this is just my personal organizational style, but I do like to create a subfolder for each timeline, because that way we have a subfolder for each card and it's just really easy to keep track of which cards I've exported and which cards I haven't. So I'm going to call a subfolder by the same name that I called the timeline. So in this case, I can look up here. I'm like, okay, this is the card 2 timeline that I'm on right now. So I'm going to create a subfolder called day 1 card 2. I'm going to click OK. And now it's added that job to my render queue. So now I'm going to go through this process again, and I'm going to add card 1 and card 3 to my render queue as well. One thing to note is it does remember all of my settings, so I don't have to go back and change them. Once I've put them in for one timeline, I can just keep adding new timelines. Okay, so now I've created 3 jobs in my render queue. And if I want, I can go back, I can import more footage, I can create more timelines. But if I want to like go to lunch, I'll just start the render. So I'm going to select them all and click Start Render. And as it's rendering, it will actually play it back so you can see the process of the render, and the speed that it renders depends entirely on the configuration of your system, how much RAM you have, how much GPU memory you have, and so on. So I'm just going to let this run and come back when it's all exported. Okay, so my render is complete. I have these folders where all of the renders appeared on my hard drive, card 1, card 2, and card 3, and as you can see, we've got a whole bunch of MXF files that are named based on the name of the original camera file, and Avid is going to be able to read and understand these files, and we can use them as Avid Media files while we're editing. However, the last step that we need to do before we're ready to move into Avid is actually to create metadata information that Avid can read, that it can link up to these media files. So the way that I'm going to do that is by going back to the Edit tab in Resolve. This is where I originally created the 3 timelines. I'm going to open up each timeline, and I'm going to do this one at a time, and I'm going to go through the process of exporting just the metadata for these clips. So in order to do this, the timeline that you want to export you have to double click it, and it has to be open. Once it's open, you can right click on it, and under the timelines menu, you can click export. And what you want to do is you want to export an ALE. And that is an Avid log exchange file, and that is going to be a bunch of metadata information that populates your bin in Avid. So what I usually do is I'll navigate to kind of the same place that I saved all of my dailies, and I'm just going to export this ALE file, and I'm going to put it in the same folder, day 1, card 1. So here it is, and I'm going to click save. And then it'll tell me, yep, you've successfully created this ALE file. I'm going to click OK. And now I'm going to do that for my other 2 timelines. Okay, so now I've exported 2 different types of files for every card. I've exported MXF files, one individually for each piece of media, and then I've exported an ALE file, which is an Avid log exchange metadata file that I'm going to use in Avid Media Composer. So in my next video, I'm going to go through the process of bringing all of this stuff into Avid and organizing my video dailies.